Hello, and welcome to, I guess, episode 72, a little bit of a bonus episode for this series. I completely intended on the last episode being, well, the last episode, but as I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, it feels a little incomplete without having gone over some of the stuff that happens at the end of the game or after the end of the game. So we're going to be discussing that a little bit in this episode, and I could have just immediately started recording that video and had it uploaded shortly after, but I started running into problems, so that's kind of what I've been up to over the past little bit. I often say that Factorio is a game about solving problems that you yourself have created, and that is 100% the case in a lot of these. The biggest one, however, is, probably one of the maybe a little bit more obvious. Anyways, let's start with Aquillo. So I wanted to kind of showcase, well, let's not start with Aquillo. Let's start with the ship. So I have done a couple of things to it, not much since we last looked at it. And maybe the most obvious one is the Prometheum science here in the middle. But I decided after the last episode to kind of just, send my ship to the Shattered Planet. Let's just see how far it'll go. I think I got about a quarter of the way there. I think I got about 1,000,000 kilometers before I started running into problems and seeing some of the glaring issues with what I had created. So part of that was we had way too much of a front end. We did not need to protect that far out. I took the second railgun out and kind of scooched all this back in. It was hanging out to about right here. I think I pulled one of the asteroid collectors out and tucked a lot of this back in. The railgun turrets were not the issue. I actually never even came close to running out of railgun ammo. The problem was actually the rocket turrets. These things were just absolutely gobbling up the rockets, and so I had to I started trimming those back, and then I ended up making it to about halfway to the Shattered Planet before I really just we couldn't keep up. And a lot of that was because of the rockets just kind of wasting rockets out here. But I think I took around maybe 9 or 12 on both sides. Like, I really cut this back. Just kind of, really keep it focused in the middle. So that's one thing that I did. Something else that I did was I completely forgot to actually connect these, and yeah, so these are now connected to this line. Had I thought about it whenever I was setting up the belt braiding, I probably would have had this only filtered to Prometheum chunks. And then instead of having this come down to this line, I probably would have had it do something more like this instead, and just have these be on this line. However, I am going to leave it exactly like we had it. And go me for messing that up. Yeah, good luck finding that one. Let's see if I can catch that. The answer to that is almost certainly going to be no. And it's going to take it about 30 minutes to get to this side. So anyways, that is a few of the changes that I made for the end of the ship. I didn't really make too much. Oh, I removed a beacon here in the middle because sulfur was kind of a problem. Balancing this was an issue, and I needed for the coal synthesis chemical plants to be able to collect extra if they needed to. So I did remove a beacon here. That might slow down production a little bit, but it seemed to have solved a lot of the problems that I was having with sulfur. And other than that, I don't think that I had anything else. The biggest, some of the biggest potential issues that I had were actually coming from collecting the carbonic asteroid chunks, which is why I had these at the front also filtered for carbonic asteroid chunks. I don't think it'll be that much of a problem anymore. But yeah, so once I had decided that, okay, I really want to show off the Prometheum science, we moved on to the quantum processors. So, yeah, let me just, let me get rid of these eggs for now. And that's actually going to cause problems over here, because I do not have any defenses around this over here. Couple more? Or is that it? Yeah, let me just dispose of these. No, okay, really? Alright. Yeah, as you can see, there's a couple of extra things that I did. By the way, I ended up setting up some captive biter spawners, and yeah, I used the method that we used on Gleba to collect the jelly to do the same thing that I did here. So this is bringing in anything, any biter eggs if it's less than 100 or 501. This one is spitting out if it's greater than 500. And it has a priority filter, so these things are saying fresh, which allows me to have the freshest biter eggs anytime that I need them. And that was not the only thing that I did on Novice. We will get to that in a minute. First off, quantum processors. So I needed quantum processors here, and I started running into problems because just around the same time that I finished the episode, I finished mining out all of the lithium brine that we had here. So I did need to expand, and as you can see, I ended up needing to drop some trains. So nothing special here. I have a very tiny stacker. I have a very standard kind of like stacker here with a train, you know, tiny train hub, kind of like the one we used on Volcanus and then continued to use elsewhere. The biggest, well, not really biggest, but one of the hurdles here was getting heat in between because you can't go through these rails here. So I did have to put a heating tower in here and have the bots bring in some rocket fuel to be able to heat this section here. Not a big deal. That is now set up for registering the heat. When you're dealing with the trains on Aquillo, the biggest dilemma is, well, do you want to use elevated rails or do you want to just place them on the ground? I opted to just place them on the ground because I have quite the surplus of ice platforms. Every time I need ice platforms, I come over here and grab like 2 full rows, and by the time I come back, it's completely full. So ice platforms, not a big deal, not a problem. This is plenty more than we would ever need anyways, so there was that. And then the nice thing about trains is most of the stuff doesn't freeze. None of the signals, none of the rails, none of this needs heat, so it is good to go. But you do need heat with outposts, so it doesn't make sense to drag heat all the way over. I did drag electricity all the way over, which is, you know, that's fine. But I used the rocket fuel setup that provides us both heat and power, and I kind of just cherry picked some of the ammonia build that we had over there and then placed a chemical plant turning ice into water with 2 recyclers into each other, just getting rid of the excess ice. That way we can keep up with the ammonia. And the only thing outside of this that you need is to bring in some oil. So I had to bring in oil, and pretty much any outpost is going to look very similar to this. You're going to have whatever you want with oil, and then a little, you know, kind of set up like this. So if we look over at the oil, similar situation. I already have oil. It is also what I want. It is needed in this, and there you go. Same situation. I basically just copied and pasted what I had over on the other side. 2 recyclers getting rid of the extra ice. We have ice being converted into water. We have ammonia solution being converted into ice and ammonia. And that is our heat source. As for the other, the fluorine, I just kind of dragged it over like I did with the other one. Not a big deal. I mean, most of the space that we have here is quite excessive. you could definitely condense this down to be a little bit smaller. And as a matter of fact, I kind of started the process of that. So I just started shoving in beacons and modules anywhere that I could, just to kind of beef up production of anything that I needed, which was the quantum processors and the cryogenic science. So that involved removing cryogenic plants to add in a beacon so that I could get all 4 or all 5 of these connected. I could have removed this one too and added, you know, a couple of beacons in here. It ended up being like, this is plenty enough for what I wanted. You know, adding in some, I could have added some more up here. So you kind of get the idea, right? You're just kind of tacking on, adding in a little bit here and there, and you can see that here as well. So I deleted sections just so that I could squeeze in some productivity modules and some speed beacons, just to kind of, you know, make sure that things are up to par and production is just going. I didn't do anything else on this end. And I think that pretty much covers everything that I did on Aquillo. That was my starting point. So once I got to this point, it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm beefing up the science, so I might as well start beefing up some of the other science. So I started getting to the Novice stuff, but we'll get to that in a second. We're going to backtrack a little bit. Let's start with Volcanus. So Volcanus, I effectively didn't do anything at all. Volcanus is great. It just, you know what? It just keeps going and we're all good here. So didn't need to extend anything, didn't need to add anything else. I did end up adding my big electric. Wow, I always keep saying big electric. My big mining drills. I did end up adding these back in to try to upcycle some of these because I was going to end up having to use them. And that was the most time consuming part, was trying to get some of these over to Novice. And we'll get to Novice shortly. Gleba, I think I had the least amount of changes. If I, like, and fast forward to right now, Gleba is now my kind of bottleneck. So I would probably do something similar to what I did to the lithium plate over here and just start removing sections and adding in beacons. Oh my goodness, my cat just scared the hell out of me. Good job, cat, falling out of the window. Anyways, where was I? Gleba. Yeah, so I would probably remove like this section here, and just kind of alternate and stagger them, and then add in as many, you know, productivity modules and speed beacons as I can, and then try to match the remaining pentapod egg biochambers to kind of try to keep that relatively balanced. And so far, this is the least amount of I haven't changed anything on Gleba. Once we left Gleba, it's basically been the exact same. Nothing major. I think I did at one point end up adding more plots on here, on that section and down here, but that's about it. Fulgora, I also didn't change that much. I ended up upgrading the electromagnetic plants over here from normal to epic quality. And I also set up a little bit of a buffer. So this is one of the sections that I was actually capable of doing that. Obviously, Gleba is a direct insert, so we can't have, like, we don't have any kind of a buffer. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make a little bit of a buffer here. So I did that. We are gaining, you know, 6 full chests of this, so I can make it, you know, whatever research that I'm going to be researching that needs this is, yeah, it's going to make quick work of that. I did need to buff up the accumulators over here, so I just added some speed modules, and I also converted some of the supercapacitor EM plants into the epic ones. So that's all 4 of the not Novice planets. So Novice is where I've spent the most time. It has been a lot of work, let's say. So by the time I got to Novice and started looking at the sciences, I was like, oh my goodness. I started realizing I had mined out almost all of this coal, almost all of this iron, which is now mined out. I had mined out most of the iron section up here, but I decided to cut this off in favor of leaving the rest of this for our nuclear. I had mined out this one, which I believe was, yep, copper. All this copper was gone. We were almost out of copper over here. There was a lot of stuff that was just being completely mined out. So I was like, I really need to expand the mining, but I didn't have any big mining drills, so I had to start making those. And then it was, okay, well, if I'm going to be doing a lot of this stuff, I might as well beef up the sciences. Didn't have enough quality assemblers because I had taken a lot of the stuff out just to kind of finish the game. Yeah, lots of stuff like this. So adding in beacons, adding in modules here and there. Obviously, I still have room for adding in modules, but this is largely not necessary. It's kind of getting to the point with the sciences where I might have to start adding in stackers and maybe extra storage. The biggest struggle has been purple science, and it's not even close. I would say the biggest pain point for the purple science has been the red circuits, which I had to beef up. I ended up basically adding in, I think I added on like 2 sections on both sides of this. But red circuits, not even the hardest, or not even the hardest, not even the worst part. The worst part has certainly been the stone brick. There's nothing special about making stone brick. There's no machine that can make it faster or better. And on top of having stone problems, yeah, it was a little bit of a nightmare. So purple science has been the one that I've been spending the most time with. Anyways, I did end up expanding my mining. I've got iron over here, iron, coal, stone, and some copper over here. I believe I also added something over here, maybe not. Yeah, whatever, doesn't matter. Either way, I have spent a lot of time fixing Novice, let's just put it that way. And every time you add one thing or fix one thing, something else breaks. And it's like, no, just something else, and they keep piling up, and you add beacons and modules, and yeah. So now that brings us to, why are we here? Well, going back to the farewell, I also needed to beef up Novice because I wanted to get to the point where I could start making these guys down here. So I made some of these. These just needed uranium-235, which I had some of on Aquillo, biter eggs to Aquillo, capture bots to Aquillo, and some fluoroketone. So I don't think there's anything here that says we have to make this. Yeah, there's nothing here that says we have to make this on Aquillo, but I mean, you're either barreling the fluoroketone and bringing that down here, or, which is actually probably not a terrible idea considering that I actually have some. Why didn't I even just do that? Anyways, I ended up sending, yeah, there we go, fluoroketone. I ended up just sending them to Aquillo and crafting them there. So I have 50 of these, and I utilized the technique that we used on Gleba. So that would be the section over here with the jelly. So with this, we have jelly less than 80, as long as, if jelly is less than 88, enable if jelly is less than 88. So then that puts it into here. This one is enable if jelly is greater than or equal to 88. Now I did do 88, but really this number could have been anything. So let's just say 300 and 300. So now this is going to collect up to 300. Obviously it's not, because this is being taken away right away. But this would bring everything that is, you know, as long as it doesn't have 300 in here, it would continue to add or bring the jelly into this chest and keep it fresh. That was the idea, right? So I have a very similar setup here where I have this first one saying if biter egg is less than 501 in the storage, enable if biter egg is less than 501, and this one I have it saying enable if biter egg is greater than 500. So that is keeping a very, very fresh, constant supply of biter eggs, and everything else is just getting deleted in the recycling, little recycling back and forth. doohickey, whatever. Biggest pain point with this is the bioflux. I just kind of have it rotating around. I did have 4 separate lines coming in, and I kind of had to do all this in a hurry, so it's just, you know, out in the middle of nowhere and kind of all funky, but the 4 separate lines didn't end up working for me, so I just decided to kind of weave it in and out, see how that worked. So far, it's not terrible, but bioflux is still a pain point for that. So that is how we get a constant supply of biter eggs. And we need that constant supply of biter eggs for our ship. So how are we going to set up this ship? Well, I have conveniently brought a decider combinator up with us. And I know a couple of things. So like I said, I sent the ship out just to kind of see like a couple of things. One, how much can this actually hold? What is the capacity of this? And the answer to that is, I think it was a little over 64,000. Yeah, I want to say it was like 64,000. So since this can hold 64,000, I have connected here to an inserter to read all belts. This is how I ended up checking, but now I have a decider combinator. So we're going to make a little bit of a latch. So I'm going to connect the belt that is reading all to the back of the combinator. I'm going to take the green wire and connect the front to the back. And the red wire can then connect to our, whatchamacallit. Excuse me. What are you connected to? Oh, okay. Yes, I had a little bit of a condition with this guy. Okay, so how are we going to set this up? We want to, so what we want to have happen is if it is 64,000 that we can hold, we want to kind of go halfway and then turn around and come back, right? So we're going to set up a little bit of a latch, and let's see, we need 3 conditions, one that is an and the top one is an or. So the top condition is the one that starts the process. So Promethean asteroid chunks greater than 32,000, that is our starting point. And we're going to output the check symbol and 1. So the other part of the equation, let's start from the bottom. So we know that if the check mark is greater than 0, then it is going to send out the check mark, which keeps the loop going. So now we need the bottom half. So if the Promethean chunk is greater than, and this is going to be our end point. So once it is no longer greater than whatever we want on the low end, the check signals stop rotating back into each other and we'll stop broadcasting the check signal. So what are we going to set this up for? Like we could just say, well, once it hits 0, then we're good to go, right? The thing is we are going to be bringing in biter eggs, and the biter eggs have a rocket capacity of 500, which means that we are probably bringing 500 up here. So if we look at the Prometheum science, we need 10 biter eggs for every 25 Prometheum asteroid chunks. Which ends up meaning that if we have 500 eggs, we need a little over 12. No. Oh my gosh, I'm tired. Okay. If we have 10 biter eggs, for every 10 biter eggs, we need at least 25 Promethean chunks. So 10, so 500 divided by 10 is 50, so 25 times 50 is 1,250. So we're going to aim for a little bit higher than 1,250. I'm pretty sure that's right. I'm actually just going to stay on the safe side and say 1,500. And even to be safer than that, let's say that we have more than one load of biter eggs that comes up. So it, you know, it brings it in if you don't have 500. So once we get to 490, it's going to bring in another 500. So let's just say close to 1,000, which is going to put us in the 2,500 mark, but we're going to just stay on the safe side and say 3,000. So we want the ship to kind of, you know, stop sending out the check mark, and this will all make sense in a second, hopefully. Stop sending out the check mark. Start once we get to 32,000, so it will return home. And then once it gets below 3,000, we can start the trip back. Okay? So how are we going to set that up? So we're going to go to the shattered planet and our fly condition. We are going to fly until circuit condition of check is greater than 0. Once this condition is met, so once the check is greater than 0, we have hit 32,000 Promethean chunks on the belt storage. Excuse me, where are we going? I guess we're taking off. So once the check signal has been reached, it will then continue to do whatever the next item is. So we want this to go to Aquillo, and is going to request in 3,000 of the quantum processor. So we just want to wait until all requests are satisfied. Then it can continue on to Novice to collect the biter eggs. So we kind of want it to stay in orbit and just continuously bring in biter eggs and send down science until we have certain conditions met. We are probably going to have somewhere between 500 and 1,000 biter eggs, as we were just talking about. And we want to have enough Promethean chunks to offset that, which is why we're doing the 3,000 other side of the check marks. So that means that this whole time, the check mark is enabled. It starts at the halfway point heading towards the shattered planet, and the check mark stays enabled all the way until we get to Novice, and until we start running out of Promethean chunks. So as we start running out of Promethean chunks, the signal will go away, and we want the condition, we want you to stay here until check is less than 1. So here it's greater than 0, so we have at least 1, and then it comes back. And it still tries to get to Novice, or it continues to do this whole section until we get to Novice, and we have less than 3,000, but we have the biter eggs, so we can just take the biter eggs with us and just make the science on the way back towards the shattered planet to collect more of the Promethean chunks. Make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. And that is it. That is our system. So we are now heading to Aquillo. Well, not we. I am not in the ship this time. And yeah, that is going to end up being it for me for this episode. I am probably going to take away the combinator and maybe see if this thing can travel to the shattered planet. I really wish that there was something that, you know, some kind of you would hope for like a little carrot on a stick, but once you get out to the shattered planet, it's pretty anticlimactic. Nothing really happens. You get out there and then it's just like, all right, we're here. I guess we're going back now. Maybe once they add 2.1. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so I would also just like to, you know, give a quick little shout out to everyone that subscribed over the last, oh man, what has it been, 4 months now that we've been doing Factorio content. I did a no DLC guide, and then I started this guide. Well, yeah, I split it into 2. I had a novice saga, and now I'm doing, you know, this is the end of the, or after the end of the post novice guide. And yeah, I have some more content coming up, but I would just like to thank everyone that had, you know, has subscribed, all the comments. Like, I really just planned on having like a one and done and that was it, but based on all the comments and all the feedback, all the subscriptions, all the views. I really just want to thank you guys again. It has been a fantastic journey for me, and I hope to continue to make lots more content. Some of that will be, like I said before in the last episode, some of that'll be Factorio based, some of that will be other factory automation games. You know what? We'll see where it goes from here, right? Yeah, so that is going to be it for me. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it.